Hey, good Saturday morning to you. Week 2 of the Money Down. Chris Schubert, Kyle Krabs, Joe Marino. Smiles across the board. It is the Week 2 slate is here. Kyle, I'll start here with you, man. It's exciting. Another week, another slate of games to go through. Listen, you and I sitting 5-5 after Week 1. Everyone's got to bounce back. Everyone's going to have a good week this week, but I'm excited to get into some of these games.
Yeah, I feel good after kind of reviewing what the slate looks like and some late moving lines that I think are going to make for some more compelling storylines. And hopefully you jumped on some of these lines early because the late movement here, I mean, 4 or 5 of the games that we're scheduled to talk about today, just overnight, you get a full point worth of movement. So I think that's pretty foretelling that if you got on some of these early, you might be in for a real nice day.
Joe didn't get the fashion memo about the shirt change based on last week, but that's okay. We won't hold that against him. Joe, welcome. Week 2 of the college slate. You feel good?
I'm feeling better than I did last week, and I'm ready for a bounce-back week. Not a great start for me and my picks here on the show, but I'm looking for some redemption. I put a lot of work into my picks this time around, and I'm ready to start climbing out of this hole.
Well, if you guys are ready, I'm ready. Let's get this started. We have a 10-game slate that we are going to discuss here in the first block of the program. And let's start with that marquee matchup that I think everyone's got circled. Ohio State against Oregon. You see it down there at the bottom. 14.5 point spread, Ohio State favored at home. The over-under at 65. Listen, we got 10 games to get to, so we're going to keep this rapid. We're just going to get our pick started right away. Joe, where are you going in this one?
I'm rooting for all the points in this game. I don't necessarily love the idea of Ohio State winning by 14.5 or Oregon covering. But what I do feel good about are points in this football game. The Buckeyes, they showed plenty of big playability last week against Minnesota. They hung 45 on the Gophers. I think Oregon has the opportunity to be a more balanced offense. They scored 31 on Fresno State. I like the receiving talent on both teams, especially Ohio State, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, a couple of guys that are probably going to be, high draft picks next April. And then, you look at this Fresno State team that Oregon played last week, and they were able to, pass for 300 yards against Oregon on 30 completions. They were efficient through the air. C.J. Stroud, the new Ohio State quarterback, he started a bit slow against Minnesota. He settled in. You saw the big play ability of the Ohio State offense last week. And so I'm counting on a lot of points in this football game. I'm taking the over.
Kyle, our guy went with an over here in the first game. Are you joining him? You going in a different direction here when Oregon takes on Ohio State?
Well, Joe talked about the size of the spread and that being a challenge. And I almost went with a total coward mood and just took Ohio State money line and took my L on it. But instead, the Oregon Ducks program, it's a really high caliber football program. I understand they're on the road, but they're getting more than 2 touchdowns, and that is a really, really big number. So for me, I'm taking the Ducks with the points at plus 14.5. Leaning into potentially a backdoor cover is I do see Ohio State comfortably winning this football game, but Oregon does have the experienced quarterback out of these two teams. Kayvon Thibodeau's in street clothes, and that's obviously not great for the Ducks in their hopes to slow down the Ohio State offense. But like Joe mentioned, their young quarterback, C.J. Stroud, last week, he started slow, and if there's continued growing pains here while he's looking to continue to get his feet wet and acclimated, I like the fact that Oregon's got an experienced quarterback. Ohio State 1-4 against the spread at home overall and against a team with a winning record in their last 5 games in each one of those scenarios. So playing the math game a little bit, I like Oregon 14.5.
Kyle, what was the theme of last week's show when you and I were making picks? Do you know what the theme was?
Battle of wits and coming in on opposite sides of lines.
Yeah, well, all right. We can go to the full screen for me here because we're going to continue that theme here. It was the last part of what Joe said that I want to talk about. C.J. Stroud and that Ohio State offense in the second half of that game, they put up 35 points. They looked like the team we expected them to be over the course of the 4 quarters against Minnesota. I think that team shows up here today in a home game. No Kayvon Thibodeau. I think they continue to roll. I am laying the 14.5 here for Ohio State. No issues whatsoever with this 2-score plus spread. Joe's giving me the eyes early. I'm getting early eyes.
No issues, brother.
No issues.
Woo.
No issues.
7 banks hurt. Josh Proctor out this week, most likely. He's got no issue with 2 touchdowns plus.
None.
Listen,
With
one
this
thing
Ohio
we've
State
learned
offense,
in 2 weeks on this show with Chris Schubert, the man is not in on Oregon at all, right? He picked Fresno State to cover last week. He says Ohio State comfortably takes care of business today. Down on the Ducks, this Chris Schubert guy.
Down on the Ducks I am, so I will lay the 14.5. Next game up for us to talk about here, guys. Iowa State. This one should be a lot of fun. A big matchup there in Iowa. You see the numbers down there at the bottom. Iowa State, a 4.5-point favorite. The over-under sitting at 46. Kyle, I'll go to you here first. When you look at the battle for the Cyhawk, where are you going in this one?
Yeah, so if I look at the results of this rivalry in recent years outright, Matt Campbell has never beat Kirk Ferentz. He's 0-4. Iowa's won the last 5 games between these two teams, and the last time Iowa State won by more than 3 points was 2005. I'm going with the historical track record here. Iowa getting 4.5 points. I'm taking Iowa with the points. I think about Tyler Goodson and Tyler Linderbaum and Sam Laporta, a smash mouth attack that's really, I think, going to be able to get after Iowa State's defense, which has been tailored so much with the 3-3-5 and the 3 safeties across the back to counter some of these air raid offenses in the Big 12.
Joe, for you, where are you going in this one?
Yeah, I like Iowa with the points. So Iowa State looked bad last week, right? Like a 6-point win over Northern Iowa, an FCS team that didn't even play last year. Brock Purdy continues to be uninspiring at quarterback. They couldn't get the run game going despite having an NFL talent in Breece Hall. Meanwhile, you've got an Iowa team that dominated Indiana. The turnovers continue. That was something that I had my doubts about. Iowa, a big reason why they were able to win those last 6 games last year was because they were getting defensive touchdowns. They got 2 in week 1 against Indiana. And so I'm not going to make the same mistake again. You look at this Iowa team. They, like I said, they finished on this 6-game winning streak, and that was all against Big Ten opponents. 5 of those were by more than 1 score. They just destroyed Indiana. Give me the hot hand. Like Kyle said, Iowa's won the last 5 in this series. They win the 6th one here today.
There was somebody on this show last week who took Iowa against Indiana, and there was only one person on this panel that took Iowa in that game against Indiana. It was me, but I know when to get off a bandwagon at the right time. I'm out. I'm out on this one. Give me Iowa State. I'm laying the 4.5, and this was my pick that I put out on Twitter with our fancy little graphic. I think this is where they get right. Breece Hall, a little banged up entering that week 1 matchup against Northern Iowa. I think they're able to get the running game going in this football game, and they're not going to ask Brock Purdy to do a whole lot, but he is going to be able to be successful. I think they can slow down the Iowa running game, and I think that is the key to this game. If Iowa State is going to win this game, they are going to need to have success on both sides of the ball running. They need to stop Iowa's run game. They need to get Breece Hall going. I think they do that. I think they win this game by a touchdown. So I will take Iowa State. And Kyle and I already 2 separate picks through the first 2 games.
Yeah, bet, Chris. Yeah,
keep the trend going, right? Keep the trend going here on the show. Next game up for us to talk about here, Missouri and Kentucky. The SEC catfight. Kentucky a 6-point favorite. The over-under at 57. Joe, SEC matchup. You're nodding your head. Feels like there's some conviction behind this one. Where are you going?
I'm in on the Wildcats. And it really comes down to me buying in on Will Levis. 12 completions last week of at least 19 yards against University of Louisiana Monroe. 564 total yards, 45 points for Kentucky last week. They held ULM to 90 total yards and 10 points. Meanwhile, Missouri gave up 475 yards to Central Michigan. CMU played them tough. If they didn't have 10 penalties and 2 turnovers, they may have won that football game. But one thing that happened was Central Michigan was able to move the ball against Missouri. And you go back to the 2020 season with Missouri, and that defense has been struggling. They gave up 51 to Mississippi State, 49 to Georgia, 48 to Arkansas. I know they got a couple of nice new corners that transferred in from Tulsa there in Missouri, but I'm not sure it comes together quite yet. I'm riding Will Levis and this Kentucky offense to continue putting up points at home and cover the spread.
Kyle, are you also on the Will Levis bandwagon? Are you also on this Kentucky team?
Joe, speaking my language. Give me Kentucky -6. Their offensive firepower extends beyond Will Levis. They had Wan'Dale Robinson transfer in from Nebraska. He was really successful, had over 100 yards receiving. And Joe mentioned those 2 corners for Missouri that transferred over from Tulsa. Those are big, long straight line kind of athletes. And Wan'Dale Robinson, I think he's going to be a really tough assignment for either of those two players. And then you look at the offensive line they brought in Dari Rosenthal from LSU. They have Darian Kennard as your offensive tackles. You got a big physical 220-plus pound back in Chris Rodriguez. There's firepower all over the place for Kentucky. Missouri, you see the graphic there on the right-hand side. They're 1-8 against the spread on the road in their last 9 games. They're also 2-7 outright on the road in their last 9 games. Kentucky, 5-1-1 against the spread against their last 7 with teams with a winning record, 7-3 against the spread in their last 10 coming off of a win, and 4-1 against the spread at home in their last 5, and they're at home giving less than a touchdown, Wildcats -6.
Yeah, this is going to be a clean sweep for us, and you guys have echoed exactly how I feel about this game. I'll just add this little statistical piece of information to this. Last season, this team ran the ball 64.2% of the time. In their week 1 matchup, it was more of a 50-50 split. This is not the same old Kentucky offense that you're used to seeing. They're going to throw it a little bit more, and that is an opportunity for some big plays. And this Missouri team gave up 450-plus yards to a MAC team. No offense to the MAC, but I think this Kentucky team is going to be able to get rolling. And maybe a little bit of a spoiler, a little bit of a teaser. This might not be the only Kentucky-related bet that you see from me here on the show, but I will also lay the 6 here for Kentucky. We'll make it a clean sweep here on the show. Next game up, Texas at Arkansas. Horns versus the Hogs. Texas a 7-point favorite in this game, the total at 56.5. Kyle, where are you going in this one?
Well, obviously this is a step up from playing Louisiana, which Texas played and took care of their business last week, and may or may not have doubted Texas and their ability to cover 9 against Louisiana last week. But Arkansas, they won by 21 points against Rice last week and needed 3 interceptions and 21 points in the fourth quarter to get it done. I expect Texas to work the Razorbacks up front. The big question is Treylon Burks going to get cooking for Arkansas, or is Bijan Robinson going to continue his hot start that he had against Louisiana? I trust the coaching here with Steve Sarkisian. In Sarkisian and Bijan Robinson, I trust. Give me Texas -7 on the road against Arkansas.
A correction from last week, Kyle, when you were horns down all over the place. You're
correct. We're hook 'em today.
We're hook 'em this week. Okay, Joe, where are you at in this one?
Get on the hook 'em.
Yeah, hook 'em. I'm with Kyle on this one. Texas -7. I buy in on Sark. I think he might be the best offensive game planner and play caller in college football right now. Hudson Card looked great last week against a really good Louisiana defense. Bijan Robinson continues to be unreal at running back. Jordan Whittington, an outstanding receiver. They just have a lot of firepower for this offense with a great game planner and a great play caller. And like Kyle mentioned, Arkansas had their struggles with Rice last week. I'm in on Texas right now. I think they keep things rolling and they cover.
Yeah, I think this Texas offense has a lot of firepower behind it. And I think in particular, anytime we talk about Texas, we should talk about Bijan Robinson. You mentioned him earlier, Kyle, but this is one of the best backs in the entire country. And he is explosive. He can make big plays. For me, I'm not in total disagreement with you guys, okay? It's not what's going to come up in the box below me, okay? You may have to wait a little bit for this. I like the over in this football game. I know it's a big number, 56.5, and I'm going to be asking Arkansas to do their part because I think the Texas firepower, their offense, they're going to get me enough. Arkansas is going to have to do their part in this football game for me to get to this number at 56.5. But I like this Texas offense to be able to go up and down the field. And listen, this is still a Big 12 defense. There are still opportunities to be had here for points for Arkansas. They might be able to get their offense going. This total at 56.5. I am all in on this one. Next game up for us to talk about here. We got to keep these picks moving here. We got lots of games to get to. Washington, Michigan. Washington coming off of a brutal loss to Montana. Michigan looking like they might have an offense this season. Joe, the worst time for Washington to potentially go into the Big House to take on Michigan with the way that they played last week. When you look at this game, Michigan a 7-point favorite at home, the total 48.5. Where are you going in this one?
Yeah, I like Michigan -7. And what this comes down to is I don't really buy in on Washington offensively. I'm not a big fan of their quarterback, Dylan Morris. He struggled against Montana, 3 interceptions. I think they run a conservative style of offense. Dylan Morris hasn't really shown the ability to make big plays in the passing game. I definitely don't trust their rushing attack. And I have a hard time finding the course for Washington to keep this game close on the road. I think that Michigan's defense can dictate this football game. I like what they have in the secondary against an underwhelming passing attack. Like you mentioned, we saw that Michigan racked up some big explosive plays offensively last week in their 47-14 win over Western Michigan. I just don't know how Washington, I don't know what that path is for them to keep this game close. I'm rolling with Michigan to cover here at home.
Kyle, do you see the path for Washington to be able to cover here on the road?
Yeah, I actually do. Chris, you said you couldn't have thought of a worse time for Washington to go into the big house coming off a loss against Montana. I think Coach Lake is going to have his team really focused, really eager to kind of prove that this was an aberration. Michigan lost wide receiver Ronnie Bell with an ACL last week. I don't think that's something that we should be able to overlook. That's a big loss for them in the passing game. And if Washington is going to neutralize Aiden Hutchinson up front, they got a great offensive tackle in Jackson Kirkland to do it. So I'm just kind of playing the bounce back odds here, and I'm getting a full touchdown with the point. So give me Washington +7 here. I think they're due for a big bounce back, maybe a little guilty of overlooking Montana getting ready for this football game. This line started at Michigan -1. It's moved all the way to Michigan -7, some places -8. I think this is an overreaction to the egg that Washington played in week 1.
Stop the presses. Everybody in the comments, I hope you're sitting down. I hope you're not taking a sip of your coffee because you might spit it out here. Kyle and I are in agreement on a game. Put it up. Give me the Washington +7 in this football game. So, Kyle, I think you bring up a great point. The Ronnie Bell injury, I think, is something that needs to be factored in here, right? And I don't know if Michigan is going to be able to have the offensive firepower without him in that offense. And I do think this is an overreaction in both ways, right? I think this is an overreaction to how well the Michigan offense looked last week. And I think it's an overreaction to Washington laying an egg against Montana. This Washington offense is talented enough to be able to move the football, and they are going to be able to put up points. And I think their secondary can slow down Michigan. So I'm with you. You're giving me a touchdown. I think they keep this game close enough. I don't think Washington wins outright, but I think Washington keeps this game close enough on the road.
Right there with
Give me the 7. I don't think they win,
blue.
but you're giving me a touchdown. Go blue. He hits me with the go blue. He's all by himself over there, Kyle.
Josh Gaddis, baby. I trust the coaching. Washington's a conservative football team. A conservative coach has scored more than 27 points one time under Jimmy Lake. They don't have the horses on offense. They've got a
I'm not worried about the offense.
We didn't take the over. We didn't take the over. You can.
They have to keep it close. They have to be able to score.
Trent McDuffie, Kyler Gordon, the secondary alone. They got some ballers in the secondary then. Low scoring game. Take the under while you're at it.
Yeah, was it 48.5? I like the under.
48.5.
But Michigan,
take the under while you're at it.
Gets the points covered. Yeah.
Okay, Joe.
Next game up. You see that? Hold on, before we change, you see that trend over there? Washington 6-2 against the spread after they failed to cover in their last 8 games. Trends are on our side.
Oh, wow. Michigan 1-4 against the spread at home in their last 5. Yikes.
Wow. I guess we'll play the game and see what happens.
Next game up for us to talk about here, NC State, Mississippi State. I will tell you guys, we agreed on the 10-game slate that we were going to break down. We were going to preview here on the show. This was one of the games that I took a little bit more time with. I went back and forth a little bit on this game. I want to see where we're at as a group. Kyle, I'll start with you here. Mississippi State getting the 1 point, the over-under 55.5, I believe is where this number's at. Where do you like this one?
Yeah, so you can give me the Wolfpack here -1. It's effectively just outright. NC State brings back nearly everybody on their defense, and they have a firm ability to run the football. I think they're going to be able to hold their own in the trenches against Mississippi State. They get Devin Leary back. He was 3-0 in games last year as the starter. He looked good against South Florida. I think NC State is more balanced as a team. And Mississippi State, even though they're at home, they're 2-7 against the spread in their last 9 against teams with a winning record, and they're 1-5 against the spread at home in their last 6. So I think NC State's balance here is what's going to allow them in what should probably be a very tightly contested game. I think if NC State can control the trenches, they're eventually going to impose their will here, and they're going to be able to win a close game.
Joe, the ACC scout for the Draft Network. There's an ACC team involved in this football game. All right, that's it. That's all I wanted to know. Are you in? Are you in NC State? You're giving the 1? You can have it?
Go Pack, baby. Yeah, I mean, we saw how potent this football team was last week against UCF. 525 yards, 45 points. Yeah. Really nice running back tandem and Bam Knight and Ricky Person. veteran offensive line, veteran receivers, and this team is different when Devin Leary's at quarterback. And we saw that last year. They just not as effective when he wasn't in the lineup. And he matters a lot, and he's healthy, and he's locked in right now. Kyle mentioned the defense and what's returning for NC State defensively. But, Mississippi State last week, they needed 21 unanswered points in the last 12 minutes of the game to squeak by Louisiana Tech. And both teams last week were big-time favorites. One won by 45 points. The other really struggled to even win the football game. So I'm gonna continue rolling with the Wolfpack here, who took care of business last week. I think they go into Hail State and win this football game.
Yeah, NC State, you see on the trends there provided by BetPrep, 7-3 against the spread in their last 10. They make it 8-3 in their last 11 today. I am also going to lay the 1 point. I think, listen, Joe, you and I talked about this game off air. You and I were going back and forth about it, and I said to me the biggest thing in this football game. Yeah, you were busy. Sorry, we didn't loop you into the call. The big thing for me was the running game. A two-headed monster here for NC State to be able to run the ball, control the game. I think that's the key here, and I'll lay the 1 point here and feel very comfortable about it. Next game up here. Again, lots of games to get to. Pitt, Tennessee. I'm just gonna let it linger. I'm gonna let a Pitt Tennessee game out loud just linger for a second before we make a pick. Tennessee getting 4 here in this football game. The over/under at 56. Joe, you look at this matchup. Okay, I can already predict Kyle's not going to go with the over in this football game. But Joe, you look at this matchup. Where are you going in this one?
I'm going with the under. Under at 56. Where do the points come from, guys? Everything with this Tennessee offense is brand new. Joe Milton is not an accurate passer, and I don't think he's going to be this type of quarterback that's going to come in and keep the offense ahead of the sticks. And then Pitt has an outstanding defense. They're exceptional in the secondary. And I know that their quarterback, Kenny Pickett, is in his 5th year as a starter for Pitt, but it's never been an explosive, high-powered offense with him as a signal caller. So they're on the road. I just don't know where the points come from. You kind of to get to 56, you need both teams to really challenge for 30 points. I don't see that happening. I'm all in on the under in this football game.
Yeah, I didn't make this pick for the under in this football game, but I love the thought process there, Joe. I think it's a struggle for both of these teams to get to anywhere close to being this total being anywhere within the realm of possibility. Kyle, you made a face at the under. Are you joining Joe in this one, or is there something else that has your eye?
I'm actually going to go a different direction. So Rocky Top got off to a rocky start in their first game with new coaching staff. They won 38-6 over Bowling Green, but this was a 14-6 game at halftime. Coach Narduzzi, his team is really well coached on defense. I think they have an overall talent advantage on both sides of the football in this game. Pittsburgh's run defensive, it was overwhelmingly effective. They played really well last week. Joe mentioned Joe Milton and his accuracy issues as a quarterback. I don't think they're going to be able to string successful drives together of 8-10 plays, and I don't know that they're going to have the explosive play ability to create some chunk gains in that way. So falling in line with the same thought process that Joe had with the under on 56, give me Pitt -4. I actually got them last night at Pitt -3, which I like a little bit more. That extra point is an ugly one to take here, but I still think Pitt has the advantage. I'll still pick them outright.
Kyle? If you're offering the extra point, I'm going to take the extra point. You and I are going to be at odds once again here on a Saturday. I'm taking Tennessee plus the 4 here. And Joe, I agree with everything you said. Look at Joe. I love how Joe just picks something totally different from you and I, Kyle, and he just lets us battle. He just lets us go to battle. And he's just like, I'm just going to sit over here and just enjoy myself. I like Tennessee plus 4, and I think the speed in which the game is going to be played at is going to be important. Josh Heupel is going to play this game fast. That's the way he coaches. That's the way he's going to want his teams to play. That can be a challenge for Pitt. This is not the first time that Narduzzi's gone up against. Look at Kyle. Look at Kyle leading in. Go ahead.
You can only play fast if everybody knows what they're doing. It's brand new offense.
Fair enough. But I trust this team to bounce back from a slow start in week 1, and I think that speed is going to be the difference. I think they're going to test this Pitt defense, and yes, they're more talented, but I think the speed catches up, and I'll take the 4 points here with Tennessee in this football game. 2 more games to get to here in this block, guys, to start the money down presented by BetPrep here on the Draft Network YouTube channel. Cal TCU 11.5-point favorites, a total in the 40s, 47 points. Joe, where are we going in this one?
All right. So I'm going with the Frogs. Was it minus 11.5? I'm buying into the experience that they have on offense. Quarterback Max Duggan, he's been there for a while. And that offense brought a lot back from last year's team, a team that averaged over 30 points per game and 411 total yards. And of course, the big talking point with this game that I'm sure everyone had in their notes is that Gary Patterson has never lost to a Pac-12 team. And TCU's pretty hot right now. They've won their last 4, 6 of their last 7. And then when I think about this Cal team, I mean, Nevada threw the football all over them last week. And so I think that a TCU offense that is pretty experienced, they're going to be able to take advantage of some of the weaknesses in that Cal defense. And I just don't know that Cal has the offensive firepower to hang with this team. And their strength of their team is their defense. And right now I don't trust the Cal defense. So give me TCU to cover at home.
Kyle, the nod of approval appears to be coming. It also could just be a snarky nod of approval when you're going to hit us with the Cal plus 11.5, but go ahead.
No, I'm taking TCU minus 11.5. I took Nevada outright over Cal last week, and that was with a statuesque quarterback in the pocket. I mean, Carson Strong, and now you got Max Duggan, who's a dual threat quarterback, and I just think that's going to create a lot of headaches. I think TCU is comfortably the faster team. Joe mentioned everything they brought back on offense. They also brought back 8 starters on defense. I think that team speed is really the X factor here. Cal had some success against Nevada when they ran the ball. They're going to have to get back to that, but I don't think you're going to be able to push TCU around to the same degree which you pushed around Nevada, and I don't think you have the speed to really handle what TCU is bringing to the table. So give me TCU giving 11.5.
I'll let the two gentlemen who gave the insights speak for my pick as well. You can put the box up. I'm also taking TCU minus the 11.5. Joe, you kind of stole my thunder with that Gary Patterson line of him never losing to a Pac-12 school. But yeah, you read that and you're like, okay, he knows how to coach up his teams to play these Pac-12 opponents. So I'll take TCU minus 11.5. All right, guys, last game that we're going to get to here in this block of games. And I will say the game that I would say gave me the most fits. I know I talked about NC State, Mississippi State giving me some trouble. I think this is the game that gave me the most fits when trying to figure out what I wanted to do here. App State, Miami giving 8 points, a total 54.5. Kyle, when you look at this game, I think everyone's going to look at the Miami side of the ball. They're going to look at a team that got embarrassed, did not play well against Alabama. They're giving 8 here against App State. Where are you going in this one?
Yeah, let's not make this harder than it has to be. I'm taking Miami minus 8. They're the more talented football team by a significant margin. I understand they got their expletive rocked by Alabama last week, but Miami came into this season and they were talked about as a potential natty contender. And because Alabama beat them by 30 points, like everybody's off and we're having this big shift away from the Canes, they have a bunch of talent. They're at home. They're ticked off. They're laying less than 10 points. They beat up on App State quarterback Chase Bryce last year, 48-0 when he was playing at Duke. And they actually played the run pretty well against Alabama. They only conceded 1 explosive play on the ground. I think they're ready for a bounce back. Miami minus 8.
Joe, are you joining Kyle in this Miami minus 8?
No, I'm not. What I'm in on for this football game is the over 54.5 points. It's pretty tough to measure these two teams and figure out how they stack up. I don't know that we learned anything about Miami last week with a tough Alabama football team, but I'm in on the points for this football game. And the reason why is we talk about Miami and for all the hype that this team is, they were average on defense last year, and they lost a couple of really talented players up front, especially a couple pass rushers in Quincy Roche and Jalen Phillips. Just 5 starters back from that unit. And the strength of that team last year was their offense, 34 points per game, over 400 yards. And the last 3 games from this Miami defense, they've really struggled. 44 points to Alabama, 37 to Oklahoma State, and 62 to UNC. I think App State will be able to score on them. They've scored in the past. They averaged 34 points per game last year. They hung 33 on East Carolina last week. They're a balanced team. They have an experienced quarterback in Chase Bryce, who was the backup to Trevor Lawrence for a couple of seasons at Clemson. Then he was at Duke. I'm here for all the points in this one because measuring how they stack up against each other and determining, the 8-point margin in either direction was difficult. I do feel good about there being a lot of points in this football game, and 54.5 wasn't that big of a number for me to be afraid of it.
Kyle, why don't you make some room over there, buddy? Because I'm also going to take Miami minus the 8. And I think you said it best. I understand the way they looked against Alabama. But I think that says more about who Alabama is than it says about who Miami is. This is still a team that we talked about as an upper echelon team in the college football landscape here in 2021. They bounce back. They're going to be ready to go. They get their season back on track where they want it to be. They win this football game by 2 scores. I will lay the 8 points comfortably. Again, I think the last week was more about Alabama than it was about Miami. So I will take Miami comfortably here in this one. All right, guys, that's it for the first set of games. But when we come back here on the Money Down presented by BetPrep, Patrick Everson of BetPrep going to join us. We're going to talk about some of these trends. It is the BetPrep breakdown here coming up next on the Money Down presented by BetPrep.
Hey guys, Jordan Reed here from the Draft Network, and I'm here to talk about the SWAC and MEAC Players of the Week presented by the East-West Shrine Bowl. And there was 2 players that were high caliber this week. And the first one is Aquill Glass, the quarterback from Alabama A&M, who finished 28 of 49 for 426 yards and 4 touchdowns, all to 4 different targets. They get the big victory over the South Carolina State Bulldogs, a team that they did play in the spring, and then they came back and played them in the fall during the first week of the season. And Aquill went out and played exactly how he did in the spring. Last spring, he ended up being the SWAC Offensive Player of the Year, and he really fed off of that momentum going into the year. So Aquill Glass, a player that got off to a phenomenal start, and he is feeding off of the momentum that he had going into the fall season. Now, switching over to the MEAC, a conference that did lose some teams this year, but Norfolk State did reload, and Chris Myers, a defensive end from Norfolk State, a player that has the NFL pedigree. Robert Myers, his brother, was drafted by the Baltimore Ravens in the 2015 NFL draft, and the genes from that family has just trickled down to Chris Myers now, who went on to have a sack against Toledo. Even though the Spartans did not get the victory, Dawson Odoms is the new coach there, and he has spoken very highly of Chris Myers, and he's a player that definitely did stand out this week as he takes home the hardware for MEAC Player of the Week. Thank you guys for listening to the SWAC and MEAC Players of the Week presented by the East-West Shrine Bowl. Make sure to tune in to the Draft Network. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, thedraftnetwork.com, and also the Draft Network on Twitter as well. Make sure to like, subscribe, and just tune in to all of the information that we have going on. Just remember, the draft is 365 days a year. So be sure to tune in to YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and all other social media platforms as well.
Welcome back to the Money Down presented by BetPrep here on the Draft Network YouTube channel. Chris Schubert, Kyle Krabs, Joe Marino here. Once again, it is time for our Week 2 BetPrep breakdown, and this is where we bring in Patrick Everson from Props.com, representing the Colorado Buffaloes in style. I love the shirt. I love the hat. Did not see that in the pre-show before we went live. That is awesome. Patrick, what's going on here? Happy that you could join us here for a interesting Week 2 slate is, I think, the word I'd use to describe it.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. Definitely interesting. It's a big step back from Week 1, but as somebody pointed out to me earlier in the week, we should probably all be grateful that Week 1 had those kind of matchups. It wasn't too long ago where Week 1 looked a lot more like Week 2, and I think we'd rather start the season with a buffet like we got last week than get treated to what we normally get, which is a lot more like this week.
Yeah, let's look at – there are still 2 marquee matchups, I think, that everyone's looking at here this week. Let's start with them. They were the first 2 games we talked about here on the show. When you look at this Oregon-Ohio State game, 14.5 points, what are the trends telling you? What's the action telling you here for this one?
Well, first off, this went up, at a couple of different books. They told me this went up on Sharp Play. Some places went up at 13.5, some at 14, and everybody seems to be at 14.5 at this point. So sharp players early in the week didn't mind laying 2 touchdowns with this, which I thought was interesting. It's an awful lot of points on and on that number. Talking about it late last night and early today with Scott Shelton at BetMGM Nevada. He said tickets are just shaded toward Ohio State, not big, but he said, and a lot of tickets and a lot of money on both teams in this game. And by the way, this game kicks off in like 30 minutes or something. This should not be just my opinion, this should not be a noon kickoff Eastern on a Saturday, but especially with the slate we have today. Money just over 2-1 in favor of Ohio State. This is a BetMGM Nevada's books up and down Las Vegas Boulevard. And Scott also pointed out, and Jeff Stoneback at BetMGM Nevada said the same thing earlier in the week, there is just a ton of parlays on Ohio State, and they're going to be in probably in everybody's money line parlays and teasers as well. They're going to need the dog and under in this game, and that's been echoed at multiple books that I've talked to. I talked with Twin Spires late last night, PointsBet this morning. They're all going to need the dog here pretty good, I think.
Yeah, and I think, Kyle, you're on the dog in this one. You have Oregon. I have laid the points with Ohio State. I think this is, and like you said, Patrick, this being a noon kickoff here is interesting considering the slate that we have. But there is another, I'm air quotes because Kyle would get on the next plane out to Arizona and harm me if I call this a marquee matchup. But Iowa State is probably the other game that's generating a lot of buzz with the books. What are you hearing? What are you seeing in that one?
Ton of buzz. I'm going to give you a couple of different perspectives. One, I got yesterday afternoon from Caesar Sportsbooks that I thought was interesting. And I guess maybe it's not surprising, but, this isn't normally the case. This is an interesting game. You got 2 teams hovering around the top 10. This game had the most tickets and the most money of any game on the college football slate today at Caesar Sportsbooks. And I don't know that that's the case everywhere else, but I know there's a lot of interest everywhere else, no question. This was a game that at BetMGM Nevada, Scott Shelton told me, sharp play early in the week on Iowa, plus 4.5. It went from 3.5 to 4.5, then down to 4 on that sharp play. 2-1 tickets on Iowa, and money 15-1 on Iowa at BetMGM Nevada. It's really it's interesting. There's also, and Scott pointed out, there's also what's kind of driving that. It's a little disjointed on that 15-1. There's a mid 5-figure bet at plus 4.5, as well as some sharp play at plus 4.5 on Iowa. But I'm seeing this trend at other books as well, where it's pretty heavy to Iowa, even though in some cases this line went from like minus 3.5 to minus 4.5, back to 3.5, back to 4.5. Still, the tickets and money seem to be running to the underdog here. So definitely an interesting game, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a close game. History says so.
Yeah, two of the 3 people picking on this show took Iowa, so that was very similar here on this show in the direction that we made these picks. I got a group of games that I want to talk to you about, and I'll just throw them out there. And if you have anything, please feel free to talk about it. But I think the marquee matchup, Stanford USC in the Pac-12, I think is one that people are keeping an eye on. Again, you have these conference matchups early in the season. When you look at Stanford USC, where's the money on that one?
Yeah, kind of a big number, and the tickets and money. This is coming from DraftKings, 3-1 tickets, 4-1 money on the Trojans at home. So people aren't shying off of that number.
Interesting note there. Rutgers Syracuse is another one.
That was one that I do not have. I got to admit, I got a list of games, and somehow I don't have Rutgers Syracuse. So my bad on that, gentlemen.
No, that's okay. No, blame Kyle. He was trying to push me on that game all week long in our pre-production meetings. He was like, Rutgers, Syracuse.
Yeah, last week Rutgers was getting a lot of. Rutgers game last week was getting a lot of play. So, but it just didn't pop up on my list. Sorry about that.
No, Tulsa, Oklahoma State is that one that is on your list here for this week?
That is one that was on there, and I'm trying, and I know it was on there, and I'm trying to look for it now on my DraftKings list because I thought they had it on here, but now it's not showing. So I guess they didn't. Again, apologies. I had a couple games and was in a hurry this morning. Got a couple things. Should have had that.
So when you look beyond those 2 marquee matchups in the Stanford USC game that we mentioned, is there any other game that is getting maybe a little bit more action than was anticipated earlier in the week? Is there a game that has had some late movement?
I don't know if it's more than anticipated, but Washington, Michigan is a good game I think we need to throw in here. And in fact, midweek, Jeff Stoneback, BetMGM Nevada, said there were more parlay tickets on Michigan than any other team on the schedule today, including Ohio State. And I'm sure that's still the case today. They are drowned in Michigan money. The line hasn't really moved that much, but Scott Shelton told me all the money and tickets are on the favorite. Tickets 4-1 money, 8-1 on Michigan. Total 51-48. Might be sitting 48.5 now, but sharp play got that headed downward. Tickets 7-1 and money 10. In fact, I think it went to 47.5. I'm sorry. Tickets 7-1, money 10-1 on the under. So this is one that's kind of interesting. A lot of money on the favorite, but a fair amount of cash, at least at this point, on the under as well. Usually people like to play favorite and over, so book usually needs dog and under. They're certainly going to need the dog in that game. That's a key one. And Utah BYU, it's a late kickoff here, and it's the Holy War, and a late kickoff late kickoff everywhere. I mean, 10:15 East Coast, 7:15 here. And Jeff Stoneback, BetMGM Nevada, said, look, this is a get-out game, and there's probably going to be quite a bit rolling into it from the rest of the day's games, from the handful of big games that are being played today. There could be significant, parlay, moneyline parlay, teaser liability rolling into this game. And Jeff's cohort Scott Shelton said they went from 7 to 7.5 on Utah. Tickets 3.5 to 1 Utah. Money almost 15 to 1 Utah. They got a low 5-figure play on the Utes there as well. And sharp play on over 48. This opened 47. Sharp play on over 48 helped push it up to 49.5. Kind of an interesting fun fact on this game. Late last night, very late last night, like closing time for here in at BetMGM Nevada books, there was only one straight bet on the under as of late Friday night in this game, which I thought was fascinating. Wow. I'm sure that'll change today, but I thought that was a fascinating note.
Joe, you look like you were going to ask a question before, so I don't want to jump all over you.
No, I was going to ask about the game that Patrick just spoke about, the Utah BYU game, and it sounds like the trends are heavily leaning towards Utah, but I thought it was interesting that BYU at home getting a touchdown didn't create a little bit more interest on the Cougars.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by that too, and I think it depends on the book too. Although BetMGM Nevada, I mean, we're neighbors with Utah. I wouldn't be surprised if there's maybe a little more interest in the Cougars. I talked about this with Zachary Lucas at Twin Spires as well, and that was a little bit of similar story, but slightly different. They were bouncing mostly. I think they may have gotten to 7.5, but they've mostly been 6.5 and 7, and they got sharp play on 6.5 Utah. Sharp play on +7 on BYU, and they've just been bouncing between those two numbers. So it's been interesting in that respect that it's been a kind of a sharp battle there, back and forth between those two numbers. So again, from book to book, especially as we get more and more expansive with sports betting across the United States, you're going to see some variation from book to book, whether it's regional bias or just being somewhere else where people aren't where people are looking at this game in a little bit of a different fashion. So, and that's one case where that's true today in this game. This should be a great game. And I agree, BYU at home getting a touchdown or getting 7.5, I would definitely be taking 7 in the hook there just on that alone.
Joe is smiling because Utah BYU is one of the games that we had listed down, and we didn't actually get to it on the show, but his official pick is BYU +7. So I'll let the listeners in and the viewers in on that one. That's what that Joe smile was all about there. Patrick, we appreciate you joining us. We know that you're joining the Money Down NFL version tomorrow on the show. You'll be giving more trends for the NFL game. So for those of you who are joining us here every college football Saturday, the NFL Money Down starts tomorrow with Week 1 action. Patrick will be giving you the trends and where the action is on that show tomorrow. So Patrick, we always do appreciate it. And all your work, props.com is where everyone can go to catch that. And so we thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Absolutely. Sorry I missed those couple of games. You guys have a good Saturday.
Yep, you as well. Guys, it is that time. I'm getting very, very excited here on the show. It is the Go for 2 segment. And I teased it earlier that there might be a Kentucky-related play for me. You see it in the picture. The Go for 2 bets coming up next here on the Money Down, presented by BetPrep. That's fine. I just didn't know. Sometimes when people talk back to me, sometimes their mic cuts out. Yeah. So I just didn't know if it was anything important that you were telling me.
No, you're fine.
What's up, Jaguars?
So it's going to be these two mock drafts,
here, and this is my 2022
Okay, and just be prepared. I'm going to wrap early if we're done.
know you
I'm
guys
not going to
feel a
fill.
little down right now with the ETN
I'm
news.
not going to
I know
fill
it's
for a
big
full 15.
bummer,
We're
but
going to go for
hopefully I
2.
can
We're
make
going to
it
do
up to you
bold
if you
bets,
guys
and
excited
I hope
because
to be done by
I just gave
40-ish.
you guys the number 1 player
that's
in this
fine.
class at pick
Okay.
number 5. Notre Dame safety Kyle
we're
Hamilton
saying with
is the newest Jacksonville Jaguar.
Okay.
This kid is special from a size, length, athleticism, toughness, instincts. This kid has it all. You see him making plays as a deep center field safety. You see him making plays in the box. You see him cover tight ends and receivers in the slot like he's a nickelback. He can do anything you want.
Smoother than last week.
Defensive role playing, standpoint.
In this channel, you and I, we can communicate during
characters
breaks
off
and
the
stuff.
charts.
It's not going
I
out.
think this guy's a home run. Absolute steal.
So do we just stay on this call then?
I know you guys signed
just
Rayshawn
hang on
Jenkins
after.
last year,
And Jane will
but
hop in.
this kid is another level of caliber.
And yes, I agree with Joe. That's
he'll be a difference
it's
maker
tight. I kind of like
for
the format.
Jaguars defense.
Henry,
the
the
flow
mics
is
are
a lot
still going to
better.
the
Thank you
master.
guys for watching
you know.
my mock draft. Please make
We
sure
didn't
you
say
like and subscribe down below. Leave me some comments. What do you think? You love it? You hate it? Let me know, man. It's all good. Let me know. What's up, Raiders fans? This is Bentley Wiseman here, and this is my 2022 NFL mock draft. Where do I start with the Raiders? Let me just first say, I think the Raiders are getting unfairly scrutinized. I think the over-under Vegas has them at 7. I would slap the over. I think you guys are going to have a pretty good year and surprise a lot of people. That being said, I do think there are some holes on this roster that could be addressed, specifically along the interior of your guys' defensive line. You have a lot of older, kind of journeyman type players who are all on expiring contracts. I think adding a young, exciting interior rusher to pair with Max Crosby and Yannick Ngakoue makes a ton of sense. Enter Texas A&M's defensive lineman DeMarvin Leal. This kid is a freak, people. He's 6'4", 290 pounds, really athletic, light on his feet, but has rare explosiveness and power along the inside. As a run defender, he's immovable. You're not moving him off the line of scrimmage. He has strong hands, active hands to stack and shed and make the plays in the backfield. As a pass rusher, you see him get pushed with his power. He's really quick to win the inside. I think he'd be an outstanding addition to this Raiders defensive line. Thank you guys for watching my mock draft. Please make sure you like and subscribe down below. Leave me some comments. What do you think? You love it? You hate it? Let me know, man. It's all good. Let me know.
Welcome back to the Money Down presented by BetPrep here on the Draft Network YouTube channel. Chris Schubert, Kyle Krabs, Joe Marino back once again. The go for 2 picks. We're doubling down our 2-unit plays of the day. And listen, I'll admit it. I'll raise my hand. It's got to be a rebound week for me. I went 0 for 2 last week in this format, so it needs to be a rebound here for me. Each of us have 2 bold picks that we are going to bet. It can be something that we bet earlier if we want to double down on it, or it can be something completely off the board. Kyle, I'll start with you. Your first go for 2 pick of the week 2 slate.
Yeah, so I'm looking across the slate of games, and I'm hoping maybe something speaks to me that wasn't on the board for the things that we talked about. And I get down to South Carolina at ECU. And South Carolina's laying a field goal. I got it in at -2. I believe it's up to -3 now. And I'm asking myself, is this a trap? It feels like a trap. South Carolina, they're getting back running back Kevin Harris. They're getting their starting quarterback Luke Doty back for this contest as well. At the end of the day, I'm going to bet on an SEC school with superior talent with such a slight margin of victory needed to hit my bet. South Carolina, -2. You see it there on the board. Oh, by the way, ECU at home against the spread in their last 8. They're 1-7.
Joe, your first go for 2 pick of the week.
Well, I promise you we didn't plan for this, but
No,
I'm
come
also
on. This is
in
a
on
conspiracy.
I'm in on the Gamecocks, baby.
Ridiculous.
-2 at East Carolina. Kyle mentioned
Go
that
Cox.
Kevin Harris, the outstanding running back at South Carolina, he's back this week, and they proved that they can run the football last week without him. They have a physical offensive line. In last week, Appalachian State ran the football all over East Carolina, over 225 rushing yards, 6 yards a carry. I think that continues this week with even more potency for the South Carolina Gamecocks in the passing game. And so I'm in on I'm in on South Carolina being able to win this game by, a field goal or more.
I see what's happening here. There's a conspiracy to move me down the leaderboard here by you two, and you've conspired against me by picking the same game. I see what's going on here. That's fine. On my first go for two pick of the week, and I talked a little bit about this team earlier, and we were all in agreement on this show that we were taking Kentucky minus the 6. I like, and this is a unique one here, I like the Kentucky team total over 30.5 points. I think, listen, this total in general was in the 50s. I think it was 56. I don't know how much I trust Missouri to score on offense, but I really like the way this Kentucky offense has been rolling. So I like them to cover the 6 points. I also like them to do a lot of the heavy lifting here on the offensive side of the ball. I think them getting to 31 feels pretty easy with the explosiveness of this offense and how different it is from last year. So I'll take the Kentucky team total over at 30.5. Joe, your second go for two pick of the weekend.
Yeah, this is the one that when we were working through the games that we had decided on to do for the overall show that I felt the best about. And so I want to double down here on the under in the Pitt-Tennessee game. I keep thinking about it, and the more I think about it, the less likely I find there to be places for both of these offenses to score points. I think that, even though Kenny Pickett is so experienced for Pitt, they've never been a high-powered offense. It's the second game under Josh Heupel, second game for Joe Milton. That offense started slow last week against Bowling Green, a game that they were favored to win by nearly 40 points. So I just feel like I just feel really good about the under because I can't find where the points are going to come from in this football game, and I need both teams to push for 30. Give me that under 56.
So I need the production team to give me a clarification on this because this is a go for two pick, which means this is a 2-unit play for Joe, but he's also bet it earlier. So is this technically a triple down for Joe because now he's got three units on this game? So Joe's going all in. He's putting all of his chips in the middle on this one, the Pitt Tennessee under 56. Kyle, and the production team has told me that it is now a 3-unit bet for Joe. So he's tripled down here on this one. So Kyle, for you, where are you going here in the go for two second bet?
Well, I can tell you the play on words is very fitting. It's a 3-down bet for Joe. The money down is third down in football. So Joe, very well done there. And Chris, listen, good. I do want to specify your paranoia is coming off the rails here, talking about the conspiracy theories to drive you down the boards. Yeah. I'm not the one that was having back channel conversations with the other person on the show and didn't get invited to the call. Okay. So I don't want to hear any of that. But at the same time, I also took Tennessee under 56 because like Joe said, this Pitt defense, this Volunteers offense, it's a real rough matchup for Tennessee. My question is, does Pittsburgh have the explosive play ability to create a lot of chunk gains and get quick scores? I don't think so. I think Pitt's going to play clock control. They're going to be methodical. You're talking 8, 9, 10 play drives to get into the end zone. I don't trust Tennessee to score, period. Give me the under on this game, 56. I'm all the way in.
I mean, what do you want me to say? I mean, you guys made the same two go for two picks. I mean, what do you want me to say? It's a conspiracy.
Great minds think alike. That's there you go.
So earlier in the show, when we were talking about Texas, Arkansas, you guys both took Texas. You laid the 7 points, and you explained your reasoning for that this Texas offense just feels different. Bijan Robinson, Hudson Card. There's a lot of momentum, and there's question marks about what this Arkansas team is going to do defensively. I took the over in that game, and I kind of teased it. I said, don't go away from this. I'm gonna come back to this later. This is where I'm putting Texas -7 in my go for two. That's how confidently I feel. I don't feel Joe Marino, Pitt, Tennessee under 56 confident where I go and triple down with a pick and I put it in 2 spots. No, I only felt confident enough here as a 2-unit bet. But I think this Texas team looks different. It feels different. I think they win again. So this is the second week in a row I'm in on Texas. It worked for me last week. I'm going to go for it again here this week. So I'll take Texas -7. Okay, so those are the go for two picks. Now we have to do our bold bet, our off-the-board bet. Now, I will let you know that this does not count to the official leaderboard, which we're going to show a little bit later on in the show when we wrap up.
Conspiracy.
Did you take this up with the production team? I didn't. I want them to count. I hit mine last week. I want that to count for my record. I want it to be included, but the production team said no. So the bold take bets here for week 2. Kyle, where are you going in this one?
All right. So, Chris, you chided me over the week weekend that was and the beginning of this week, suggesting taking a Mountain West Conference road dog to win outright against a Pac-12 opponent wasn't bold enough because Nevada was only +3. We hit, by the way. So naturally, I'm going to go back to the same exact well all over again. I'm taking a Mountain West Conference road dog to win outright against a Pac-12 opponent. Hawaii is +10.5. Okay? You can't tell me that this is not a bold bet. Hawaii won this head-to-head the last time they played in 2019. Give me Hawaii to win this game. Oregon State is 4-16 at home in their last 20 games. Our Warriors. I'm in.
You went bold.
Bold
You went
bet.
bold. You heard the criticism and you went bold. You took the Hawaii money line. Listen, if that, I mean, it doesn't count for the standings, but if that bet hits, I can already imagine what the week 3 show is going to start off as.
Yeah,
if
right.
Hawaii wins this football game. Joe, for you, the bold take bet here for week 2.
All right. I'm going in on Rice. They're -8 against Houston. I think they win the game outright. Excuse me. This is going to be a fun football game. And the reason why is Houston can't run the football. Clayton Tune, the quarterback there, he continues to struggle in a quarterback-friendly offense. He turns the football over way too much. We saw Rice play Arkansas really, really tough. Kyle mentioned earlier in the program that it required 3 takeaways late in the game for Arkansas to get back into it. It's a rivalry game. Rice is at home. Give me them to win this football game over Houston, despite being 8-point underdogs.
So I will also add to this conversation that there was a lot of criticism thrown my way from one Kyle Krabs for the direction that I went with my bold take bet last week.
Right.
And I took 19.5 points or whatever it is I took with Fresno State. So there was some criticism. So you know what? I've gone the complete opposite direction. And I got to represent my alma mater. Arizona State, UNLV. I am going to lay the 34 points against this UNLV team tonight. Listen, Joe, I had to be bold. Kyle called me out. I needed to be bold, and I needed to represent my team. They didn't play particularly well in their opener, but it was sloppiness. The offense still was able to score 40 points, and they would have won by even more, and they would have scored even more if they didn't have so many sloppy penalties. If there's one thing about a Herm Edwards coach team, they are going to clean that stuff up. They have an offensive coordinator that's going to want to throw the ball a little bit more. This is not going to be your traditional Herm Edwards team of we're going to play defense, we're going to run the ball, we're going to keep it close, and we're just going to try to win the game late. They have a new offensive coordinator in town. They are going to want to throw the football. I think they continue to do so, and I think they clean up a lot of the mistakes that we saw from them last week, and I think they cover this 34 points. Listen, it's going to be testy there in the fourth quarter if they're only up 30. I can just promise you that now, but I will take Arizona State minus the 34. I believe, and we didn't do this at the top of the show, but we have the results, the week 1 leaderboard that we can throw up so everyone can see how we did after week 1. So there's the money down leaderboard. Third place, Joe. A rough start, but a bounce back week for my guy, Joe, this week. I believe I am in second place. Yeah, I'm down about 2.5 units here to start week 1 with small sample size. And our guy, Kyle, leads the pack right now. But the juice got him. The juice got him on some of these bets. He's down 0.5 unit. So, but that's the leaderboard. We will update this leaderboard for you every week as we do this show. But I'm predicting a bounce back week for my guy, Joe, who's normally, listen, Kyle, you've attested to this.
It was the best one of the bunch.
Right. So I think huge correction this week for Joe. And I think when we talk next week, Joe's moved up the leaderboard quite a lot. That's going to do it for us here on the College Football Week 2 edition of the Money Down presented by BetPrep. But before we sign off and you got 15 minutes to get all your bets in before the slate begins, I want to remind everybody, tomorrow, 11:45 Eastern, right back here on the YouTube channel. It's not these 3 faces that are going to be here, but you have a Money Down NFL edition to get you ready for the week 1 NFL slate on the Draft Network YouTube channel. So 11:45 Eastern tomorrow morning. Come on in, an hour of NFL betting coverage for you to get ready for the week 1 NFL slate. Everybody, enjoy the week 2 slate of college football. We will all talk to you again next week on the Money Down presented by BetPrep for week 3. Enjoy the action. We'll talk to you next time.